Welcome back. Video number 5 of the Thomas Fine Teas SEMA Operational Case Study Exam videos. This is on limiting factors, and this is presented through the Ultimate Access organisation. My name is Sandy Hood, and we're looking, as I say, at limiting factors. This comes from the P1 Area C short-term decision making, where you are required to be able to analyse short-term pricing and product decisions. And within the indicative content, it says simple product mix analysis in situations where there are limitations on product or service demand and one other production constraint. There's been some recent questions. There was one here where you were asked to apply limiting factor analysis to a short-term production decision where there is a single limiting factor, just as it says in the syllabus. And this was to do with glass blowing and a shortage of artisan master glass blowers. In the May exam, you were given a scenario where there was different products that we wanted to produce. We just didn't have enough of the inputs to be able to produce as many as we had a demand for. Interestingly, in that one, the examiner's report, which has only recently been published, identified that in this task most candidates were able to explain how to apply limiting factor analysis to the decision, which was very pleasing. This is something I find a lot. People can tell the examiner all about the model or the theory as it's written in the textbook, but the real problem lay in being able to explain it with the depth and application that's needed in order to get the marks that will enable you to pass. And so when you are commenting on weaknesses and so on, then you can look at the practical factors such as the customer preferences, and you can learn these from your textbook quite easily. The idea that as soon as you focus on the product which is generating the greatest contribution in terms of the limiting factor, you may well be losing certain customers who want to buy the other products, but they want to buy all of them. So that because we are not producing the one with the lowest contribution per limiting factor, we may well be losing customers who want to buy all the products. But the other aspect was that limiting factor analysis itself makes assumptions about fixed costs. And as the examiner has written here, to score well, a mix of both types of limitation were required in order to get the very high marks. So how could limiting factors be tested in Thomas Fine Teas? Well, we've given some information about the infusions. I thought I'd look at infusions on this particular recording. Our infusions are produced within their own production area in the same way that our tea bags, and we have separate warehouse area for the raw material inputs. We expect 4 tons of infusion raw materials to produce 1 million tea bags, and an infusion bag holds more grams of raw material than one of our ordinary tea bags, the ones which have got the tea leaves in. Then taking the information and then perhaps adding a little bit on, I've been able to identify the gross profits of the Peppermint Camomile and Mint and Chamomile on this particular slide, and we can see they're relatively close, but at 36%, the Peppermint is noticeably higher than the Mint and Chamomile. So that's a little bit of information on the gross margin. Then we're able to look at the breakdown within the batch, and we can see here the variable costing aspects that would go into any sort of analysis where we want to define contribution. So taking a scenario here, I've assumed that infusion production has the following demand for October. So we can see here a demand of 500,000 peppermint boxes 420,000 chamomile boxes and 420,000 mint and chamomile boxes. And the production capacity has been limited, and there's only going to be 80 hours available in the month. We've got a breakdown of the price per box, so we can see they're all charged at $1.75. Then we've got differences in terms of the variable costs, fixed costs, gross profit obviously worked out from there, and the number of boxes per hour of production time. So what should we use to determine the hours of production allocated to each type of tea? If you wish, stop the tape and tell yourself, oh yeah, I know what that is, or be lazy and just listen for my answer. And of course, it's contribution per production hour, because it's the production hour that seems to be in short supply. So on that basis, we look at these three different products, and we can see that the hours needed to meet the peppermint demand is 50. The hours needed to meet the chamomile demand is 35. And the hours needed to meet the mint and chamomile, 46.67. Adding those together, we would need 131.67 production hours to be able to meet our demand. We've only got 80 hours available. So, this is the question that we may well face in one of our variants. We've only 80 hours available to produce the infusion teas in October. We would have used almost 132 hours to meet all our demand. As you know, we'll not allow anyone else to produce teas for us. Unfortunately, we will just have to accept that there will be some unsatisfied demand. Please outline the approach we should adopt to ensure that we make the best use of the 80 hours available from a financial perspective. I think it's a clear question. I think it's a question that identifies immediately that we've got to do some sort of limiting factor analysis. I think we've got certain words like we should adopt. We make the best use, telling you we need application all the way. This has got to be a Thomas Fine Teas answer, not a limiting factors answer, because we saw what the examiner said about the May exams. People were not scoring well because they were not applying their answers. So, 45 minutes per section. This would typically be half a section. Half a section means that we would get about 12 or 13 marks for this. We need to have about 8 or more good quality paragraphs where we can apply our knowledge. So we're looking for each paragraph to have 3 or 4 lines on those sort of landscape answer sheets that you're going to be given in the exam. That's approximately 3 sentences written about Thomas Fine Teas, addressing the points and then showing depth by explaining why those points that you've made are relevant. I would recommend writing straight into the word processing document and then drawing up the plan. That way, you use your headings, so you use your plan as the headings in the actual answer, so that you don't duplicate. Here's the information, the repeat from what I've already shown you, but if you want to stop the tape, this is your opportunity to have a little go. My answer isn't the only approach, but it suits the examiner's way of marking, and it gives me scope for 2 paragraphs for some of the headings. Here it is. My first paragraph is going to be production time is the limiting factor. I'm going to explain why. Then, identification of the commitments. Well, commitments are interesting. This is this sort of identification of some of the supermarkets may well have specific orders that we are committed to provide. Then a calculation of the production time available for the remaining production. That's fine. That's just shown within the analysis that we've been given. It's not something that we have to do ourselves, but it's showing the idea that there isn't sufficient time. Explanation of the use of the contribution per production hour to rank the products, and the allocation of available production time to identify the optimal production mix. This is the working on the ranking. And then the assessment of the cost of the committed sales. Quite important here. This is where we can earn strong marks, because we're recognising that we may well have a commitment, because the next paragraph would be the identification of a price worth paying for additional time. So those two, the second one, paragraph 7, is your opportunity to discuss shadow pricing, and paragraph 6 is your opportunity to bring in this whole idea that sometimes when you've got a commitment where you've got a penalty clause, it's worth it to pay the penalty clause if it means that the limited time can be used to generate so much additional profit by producing a different product. Then the additional profit more than pays for the penalty clause that you might have with the commitment to one of the supermarkets. And then we look at it and we review the whole idea of whether the financial perspective is sufficient. And there we bring in the fact that we've got a very limited number of customers. We've got the supermarkets, we've got those commercial buyers. Every single customer that we've got is responsible for a large proportion of our sales. So we need to be making sure that perhaps the strictly financial approach of limiting factor analysis may not be the best in the circumstances that Thomas Fine Tees has. Right, so we look then to try and see whether our plan matches the task requirements. We've got those 8 different aspects and we're able to say yes or no. I think that in our case we've been successful. And the reason why we check is because in the exam, if our plan has gone wrong, we can do something about it. If you haven't checked the plan, you could be ploughing off in the wrong direction. So it's well worth just taking that little bit of time out of the planning time just to make sure that the plan is actually addressing the tasks. I've got a whole series of answers here which I can't fit within this 10-minute slot that I've got, but you can certainly read them if you get hold of the slides which will be available. You can see very thorough answer. To be perfectly honest, it took me longer than 18 minutes, and I would say that it's useful as a recap. It isn't the ideal for you to see how many you could do within the 18 minutes, and to be perfectly honest, I think it would earn about 14 or 15 marks, which would be more marks than the examiner has got available. We would max out at 13. If you can write a good answer where you've got 8 or more paragraphs, then that's going to get you a pass. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you at the next recording. Thank you and goodbye.